Mrs. Winters, are you there?
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I can't
My name-
see.
My
Trish.
name is, I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Eric Marcus. I serve as the president of the Cottonwood-Oak Creek School District Governing Board, and I'm calling this regular board meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Please take note, as noted in our postings and in our agenda, that effective immediately until further notice, we are enforcing the Center for Disease Control's health precautionary recommendations, limiting public gatherings to no more than 10 people. We have noted that anyone interested in making a call to the public for this meeting was asked to complete a call to the public and submit that form prior to 6 p.m. today to Mrs. Winters. So, meeting is called to order, and we have made appropriate references to this being a Zoom meeting. It is also a recorded meeting. So if you do not wish to be recorded, this would be a good time to jump off the call. We hope that you will, however, join us. I'm going to move to item 2.04, Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone will please rise, and you are welcome to unmute if you wish. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. I'm going to ask everyone to please mute themselves unless you are speaking. I'm moving then to item 2.05, approval of the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second? Mr. Manzenberger, can I call on you for a second?
Yes, I second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Without further discussion, call for the vote. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. We move on to item 2.08. Mrs. Winters, is there a call to the public?
We do not have a call to the public this evening, Mr. Marcus.
All right, thank you very much. Then that moves us down to item 2.09, information agenda item, the superintendent's report. Mr. King.
Yes, thank you very much, President Marcus. A few items just to report on, some good things that have been going on. I get to recognize. The Beat the Odds Leadership Academy began last week with our initial meeting with, I think it was the week before that, excuse me, with the initial meeting, and that is provided through the Center for the Future of Arizona. And we have 5 of our staff members. I see Ms. Wacker is here. She's amongst them, as is, let's see, Dr. Alley and Ms. Vaca, as well as, I don't see, anyway. So far, so good. That'll continue on, and we'll also be starting a second cohort within the next couple months or so. So that's excellent. We also have, and Naya, I'm not going to try to steal your thunder. Were you going to talk in your good things about your compliance with the compliance report?
I don't think that's on my list of good things.
Excellent. Well, Ms. Prasad, and the board already knows this, but just to recognize it, in Oak Creek School received a 100% of their compliance report for the 21st Century Learning Grant that they've operated out there this past year, which is providing after-school programming for kids. They did an outstanding job, and since they did such an outstanding job, they've been asked to speak at the upcoming conference they have for 21st Century Learning, which is also excellent. The other piece is I wanted to inform the board, which I know I already have informally, but as far as a formal notification, is that the Committee for Better Upper Verde Valley Schools have gathered enough signatures, and there will be, as of now, absent any other issues happening with that, it will be on the ballot for the consolidation of Cottonwood-Oak Creek School District with Mingus Union High School District. that is my superintendent's report, if there are any questions.
Do we have any questions?
I don't.
All right, then we're going to move on to item 2.10, information agenda items, special acknowledgements by Superintendent
This
King.
is always my favorite time. The first thing I want to do is I want to recognize and tell the staff out there, whoever is watching right now and whoever may watch this in the future, how grateful and appreciative I am to work here, and what has happened over the past 2.5 months during this COVID-19 crisis that we've been through. I think one of the things that the crises really do is they reveal individuals' character, and we have actually seen tremendous character from our staff. And I see our leadership team here. We met again today. I could not be more grateful to have to be part of such a team with all the people I see, including you, Mrs. Romero. It's always nice to see you. I see you sitting there now. They came together. I think amazing things happened as far as from the feeding of the kids, providing the academic program to the teams coming together and figuring things out very quickly. It was absolutely amazing to see and inspiring to me personally. And the second thing I'd like to acknowledge is, and I see her very comfortable there, a person who I've come to know for the past 5 years, and I've come to greatly respect. We've had a lot of very honest conversations with each other over the years. I think we've been through a lot together. I have great respect for her, just not as a teacher. She's one of the best teachers you will find anywhere. I don't think anyone can dispute that at all, but also one of the finest human beings you'll find anywhere. She's a deeply caring and compassionate person, and I am also very, very proud to serve with her. And she is coming to the end of her tenure with being the president of the local Cottonwood Education Association, which is an extension of the Arizona Education Association. And during her tenure, she has seen that organization grow. She's seen that organization go through quite a few changes and continuing to support the professionalism that we see with our teachers. So I also want to recognize you, and I wish that you were here, Brenda, because this is not an appropriate way to do this, nor the next piece that you're going to be a part of as well. But I'm always glad to see you. And now is your chance to make a speech.
Speech. Me? I had it all planned. We were going to do this in public there. But I do want to thank everybody. I mean, I've grown a lot. I've learned a lot. Been through a lot with this, Mr. King, you know that. It's been a really nice feeling that, we've bridged that gap, I think, between the teachers and the administration and the school board. And I just feel like I want it to continue. And that's why I've found some other people that are going to take over for my position there. So in August, we've already met. In August, I'm going to do a call to the public and introduce you guys to the new presidents and co-presidents and secretary treasurer. So thank you for supporting me.
Yay, Brenda.
If I could just add a couple of words, since 2.5 years that I've been here, I have really come to count on Brenda for her leadership, her knowledge, not just of teaching, but of teachers, of parents, of how the system works, of how it just, we talk about this district as being, changing kids' hearts and being heart-centered. I can think of no one, I think, is more heart-centric leadership than Brenda Lewis. So I want to thank you from my heart for all that you have done for this district, especially those things that I've been able to witness over the last several years. Thank you so much. You look at what we've been through, the consolidation, all of the challenges, then COVID-19, and under your leadership, with our teachers, our administration, and our families, our children, we've been able to bring everyone together, and that is no simple task. So thank you so much. You will truly be missed.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you, Brenda, for all your years of service to COCSD, and you and Brian both. Thank you.
I would also, Mr. Marcus, like to I've spent 35 years in the classroom and worked with some amazing teachers in my career. And Brenda and Brian both are two of the best, and she will be missed.
Me too. I'd like to say thank you because they're both very special people.
Well, great.
Thank you, guys.
I just wish we could do it in person, and maybe we'll be able to do that in August, but at least now, please know that you are in our hearts, as is your husband, and we hope for only the best for both of you.
All right, here he is, fresh out of the hospital.
Well, you can let him know how much you're cared for and how much he is in all of our thoughts and prayers.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to move to item 2.11, COCSD retiree acknowledgements by Superintendent King.
Yes, thank you, President Marcus. And this is a bittersweet, of course, kind of thing, although it's not as bittersweet because some of these that are retiring are, they're not going anywhere. They're not going far. It's just more of a technical change. And the first, we might as well stay while we've got Brenda here. Let's go ahead and stay with Brenda. And we have a few comments that were made about you that were found or discovered. So I get to do those, and they're not embarrassing at all, but they are very, very kind. So Brenda taught with our district. Just to let you know, this is her 30th year with our district. She spent 14 years in 3rd grade and 16 years in 4th grade. Is that correct, Brenda? Well, God bless you. That is quite an accomplishment. The notes say her relationship with her colleagues is characterized by mutual respect and understanding. She has been a leader in her grade level and district, and she can be counted on to hold the highest standards of honesty, integrity, and confidentiality, and takes a leadership role with colleagues. A substitute comment, these were dug out of your personnel file, by the way, Brenda. A substitute commented about you. This was the best class I have ever subbed for. You do a wonderful job with these students. Students' behavior was the best I had ever encountered. And if you've ever been into Brenda's class, she has that class working like a finely tuned Swiss watch most of the time. Occasionally, she's got one of those few little stinkers in there occasionally that I've been in there. But it's always a joy to be in her classroom. But what I especially liked was this little poem. A student pinned a poem in her room, and I don't know if you're going to remember this or not. I don't remember it. But it says, Mrs. Lewis, you're the one. You make school lots of fun. Sometimes I get scared and I don't want to go. I want to stay home with my little bro. But when I get in your class, you make me feel okay, and I always have a great day. You remember who wrote that? There it is. So thank you, Brenda, and I'll see you anyway next year. So you're not going far, but thank you for everything you've always done. Our next one is Miss Emmons. I saw Heidi. Is that you, Heidi?
Yes, it's me, but as usual, I appear to be doing the witness protection plan where I can't seem to get on. I can't seem to get on the video. I don't understand it. Okay, all right. I tried and I tried again, but you can hear my voice. So
I guess that's what we'll have to take.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Miss Emmons is also in the same boat as Miss Lewis, and I think they teach right next to each other, don't they? So we got this pair, and they'll be coming back, both of them. So Miss Emmons will be returning back to DDB next year, and she taught in our district since 1989. So she taught with our district for 21 years. She taught 6th grade at CMS for 5 years. I didn't know that. And you've been taught 3rd grade at Oak Creek, CES, and DDB for the past 16 years. And Miss Emmons is an incredible asset to a team, one of the most reliable and effective educators in the district. She builds great relationships with students, parents, and teachers. She leads by example and is always willing to work as a team. She greatly contributes to the school and the district. And I will always have fond memories and will continue to make those memories of coming into your classroom and just having those conversations with you, Miss Emmons. And if you really want to know what's going on or just get insight and perspective into what's actually happening out there, then you talk to Miss Emmons. And she always has a smile on her face, and she always seems rushed every time I see her, but she's rushed because she's getting stuff ready for her kids, all the way from when she gets there and out of her car in the morning, which is usually when I run into her, all the way until the end of the day. And I'm very grateful that Miss Emmons will be staying with us as well. So speech, Miss Emmons.
Well, I'm not Miss Emmons anymore. I'm Mrs. Emmons.
Mrs. Emmons. Thank you.
Because I got married after 21 years with the same guy, so I'm kind of slow. I'm a turtle, but at any rate, the long and the short of it. So you can call me Mrs. Emmons. I'm not going to change my name because it's too hard with the state and the feds trying to do anything. But so I'll be Mrs. Emmons for a while. But other than that, it's all good. I'm very thankful to have spent my 20 years here. So.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Emmons.
So you got it right.
I'm going to work on that. That's the one thing that you have to learn is in this business, there's women have a tendency to change their names. Usually they change their names, just not the prefix for it, but that's okay. I'll work on it.
It took me 21 years.
Yeah.
I'm slow.
So our next is Cindy. And Cindy, are you here? I've got a whole panoply of people here. Cindy Nestor? Cindy? There.
Sorry, I'm Shauna Patton tonight.
I just couldn't even, I've got like 20 people on my screen. Hi, Cindy, how are you?
Hi. Good, thanks.
Good. Didn't we do this once before already, it seems like? A
Not
retirement?
officially.
Yes.
Not for good.
So Cindy has been with our district for the past 27 years, since 1993. She was a preschool aide for 7 years. She was a business office secretary for 14 years. She was the accounts payable person for 3 years. When I first came to the district, that's how we got to know each other, when you were in that position. She was the attendance secretary at CES for 1 year. And for the past 2 years, she's been a Title I Parapro secretary at CCS. She is dependable, a valuable employee, incredibly efficient. She is exactly the change we needed to make the office a well-oiled machine. I don't know who said that, but it's very nice. Our office atmosphere has changed positively. Cindy has a positive attitude that is reflected in all she does, and she is a pleasure to work with. And I would agree with those statements wholeheartedly. Always a smile on her face, and always a positive attitude. So, speech, thank you for all you've done, but a speech for you now.
Oh, I just want to say thank you. I've enjoyed all my 27 years, and especially working with most of you I see on here at one way or the other, at school or out of school. I've had a little bit of everything, and it's made me a better person, and now I can go off and do fun things. I've actually already got a part-time bookkeeping job, so short-lived, but I got some travel plans in the future.
Well, we'll miss you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Fran Forrester on? Well, I do know that Fran Forrester has worked at a couple of different of our schools, and she is moving on. She's moving on to back to Missouri. She taught for 12 years there, but she's been with our district since 2014. Her comments were, Ms. Forrester's classroom environment established a culture of learning. The students clearly respected her. She has a strong background in education and utilizes that knowledge to help grow our school and her colleagues. She is honest and straightforward and always willing to help. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And from a personal point of view, Ms. Forrester taught both of my girls, and her name is always very highly regarded in our household. I know that she led the robotics team out at Oak Creek as well as MVP for a period of time. They took some regional titles or some placements in there, quite successful. Her daughter also used to work for us quite some time ago, Darla, who I also got to know a little bit, and Ms. Forrester will be missed as well. So Andrea, are you here?
I am here.
Okay, it's darkness.
Yes. That's all I can give you.
Oh,
Well, it's always nice to hear your voice, and I got to see you today anyway, so that was always good. Andrea, if you don't know Andrea Lee, she has one of the most amazing senses of humor you'll ever find in anyone. I encountered that sense of humor today, and I wasn't even sure if it was a sense of humor at the time. It took me a little bit of time to figure out that she was actually kidding. But very dry, very witty, very happy individual, and I will be missing her as well. But I do want to read some comments that were written about her back in 2011, and I could not agree more wholeheartedly with him. It says, Andrea possesses a work outlook and ethic that complements an organization. She is always positive and approaches tasks with a smile and a can-do attitude. She jumps in to help others, and the words, "It's not my job," do not exist in her vocabulary. She's loyal, on time, and gets the job done no matter what it takes. And knowing Andrea and her position in the district. It's right across the hall. Her office is right across the hall from my office. And I really get a chance to see her very often, and it's always making me laugh, and I will miss her very much. So Andrea, do you have anything to say?
I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to work at Cottonwood-Oak Creek School District. I came for 5 years, I left for a little bit, and thankfully Becky Wilson, who I adore, called me and said, "Why haven't you applied for the job?" So I said, okay, I'll apply. So I've worked again in payroll for the past 2 years. So thank you again.
Okay, and our last is Jenna Adams. I don't see Jenna anywhere. And I don't have any notes for her, but I know Jenna well enough, and I was very happy to meet her acquaintance. If you don't know who Jenna is a very intelligent person who understands kids, has an innate ability to connect with children very, very quickly, and to create conditions for those children to have success. My understanding is she's actually looking at perhaps becoming a teacher of teachers as her next step, and perhaps even working with the Ed Professional program out of Mingus, which I think would be a very exciting opportunity and a chance for us to start growing more of our own teachers within our community and the next generation of our classroom leaders. So I will miss Jenna as well. And that is all that I have for the retiree recognition, Mr. Marcus.
Thank you very much, Superintendent King.
My pleasure.
That moves us to item 2.12. See if I can get the agenda to wake up here. And we will start with Mrs. Vaca at DDB.
Good evening. How is everybody? Well, I'd just like to say I've known all the people and worked with the people that retired, and you guys are the best of the best, and we're so grateful to have had you in our district, and I thank you. My good thing is our 8th grade promotion. It really, it worked out pretty well, actually, and it doesn't take the place for what we would have done, but the families were very grateful. It was a very emotional night for a lot of people, saying goodbye after 9 weeks of not seeing each other. But overall, I think that it went very well, and it made the parents happy and the families, and I think that's all that really matters when it comes to something like a promotion. So it ended up being a very nice evening. So that's my good thing.
All right, thank you. Let's move to Dr. Alley.
Yes, hi. So I have some fun data to share. So during our 4th quarter closure, after the first week of closure, we had to provide a free and appropriate public education by providing special education services to all of our students in the district. And our amazing team got to it and learned very, very quickly how to provide these services and also collect progress data on our students. So we provided 48% of our special education services to our students during closure, which really that is absolutely extraordinary, honestly. It's for what they did, and providing those services was hard, and we worked really hard at it, and we're really proud of that percentage. So 48% of special ed services were provided to students during closure. So it's exciting.
That's outstanding. It's an amazing achievement, especially with considering that there's no planning. I mean, it just happened and you had to just jump in. So thank you, and thanks to your team.
Thank you.
I will now go to Mr. Schumacher at CCS.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Marcus. We're going to hear, I think, a similar theme here tonight with promotion. Just want to throw out an acknowledgement to Mrs. Wacker, who's here, and our middle school team, who really in about a week's time, and I think we all had a similar experience, put together a wonderful program for our families. And of course, as Jess noted, it wasn't, like we would have usually done on a beautiful evening. It really was probably, at least for us, the most beautiful evening we've had for a promotion. So we missed that opportunity just to share the festivities on the field. However, I got a real kick out of the families and the way they decorated their cars and rolled in, and the staff really turned it into a glow party, you know, kind of out in the lot. And so we had a whole lot more folks there from our team than probably would have shown up on a traditional promotion evening. And so it was really a galvanizing event for our community. Parents had a wonderful time. But again, just a shout out to the middle school team who in very short order put together a really wonderful promotion. And I want to also acknowledge Shelley Zale and Emily Morin, who played a critical role in that as well. So.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Schumacher. We will now move to Mrs. Prasad at OCS.
Thank you very much, President Marcus. I would like to thank President Marcus and Ms. Valenzuela for attending both the Oak Creek 8th grade promotion, and Ms. Valenzuela for also attending our kindergarten promotion, which was a drive-through style. It was really important for the families to see you all there, and that was a huge stand for our district that we are working through these things together in relation with the board. I would like to also thank Happy Futures. They donated $500. The foundation donated $500 towards the rental of our screen for promotion, and we collaborated with the Verde Valley Drive-In, Dave Myers, to help set up that. And the Lisa organization also donated towards gift baskets and decorations for our promotion. Our middle school team did a phenomenal job getting things together for the 8th grade promotion, and Jamie Garcia, Debbie Rodriguez, and Jessica Badger did a phenomenal job for our kindergarten promotion.
Great, thank you very much. We will now move to MVP, Mrs. Rhoda.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. It's good to see everybody. I'm gonna just say the same thing. Just a really great 8th grade promotion. A huge thank you to Eric, Marcus for being there. Mindy, thank you. We had Mary at ours, and Steve, and Trish Winters, thank you for coming to our first celebration. We had 2 actually separate celebrations, and a big thank you to Dave Myers as well for the drive-in movie theater screen. It was a lot of fun. So just a kind of a fun way to have some closure to an interesting year with an interesting group of kiddos. I also want to just add just on a side note, we did have a grand prize winner in the Matt Force video contest. Ben Hearn, who is Suli Apodaca's son, got first place in the video contest. He won $300, and he actually did a stop animation Lego video, and it was pretty amazing. So it's been posted on Facebook. If you guys have a chance, check that out. So really great job from Ben. And we also had one of our 8th grade students win in his age group for poster. So Talon Crawford also got first place for poster for his age group. So a lot of great things with the Matt Force and our kiddos who participated. So good things.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our principals. I think I can speak for the board in saying that the promotions were really outstanding. And it's going to be interesting to see what impact what you learned from this year will have next year, because maybe some of the things that were so good this year will be incorporated into what we do next time. But again, with very limited time to plan, outstanding jobs. I know many of the parents really felt that this was a great way to achieve some level of closure. And I want to just personally thank you all for what you've done. We will move on then to item 3.01, information and discussion, agenda item regarding reopening of schools, Superintendent King.
Yes, thank you, President Marcus, again. As we all know, right now, we're in the same boat as every other school in the country in how we are planning to do our reopening of schools in August. And I've been keeping the board updated, regularly updated weekly on the plans that we've been looking at moving forward and the plan for the plan. We've been communicating those out through the newspaper as well as other forms of media, as well as our social media and so on. And there's a lot to it. There is a lot, it's a very, very complex issue. It's not as simple as saying, oh, just reopen the school and bring the kids back. We have a school district of around 2,000 children. Out of those 2,000 kids, there's many different perspectives on where the comfort levels of the families are, what the abilities of the families have been to educate their children, and while our closure schools or our crisis schooling that we went through during the fourth quarter of this past school year was good, we are looking at making significant changes to our online platforms and to our methods of delivery of our instruction, if that is necessary or as an option to families that may deem it necessary to keep their kids home. So what I would like to do is I would like to have just a discussion, but a series of questions from the board that could lead to even some further follow-up questions on just where your questions are and the things that you would like to know regarding the reopening plans.
All right, well, thank you, Superintendent King. Let me ask board members, do you have questions for the superintendent? Mrs. Bejarano, you need to unmute. Mrs. Bejarano, we can't hear you.
I don't see Mrs. Bejarano.
Can you unmute? Let's hold on for a moment for her to unmute.
I do have one, Eric.
She has. Let's start with Mrs. Bejarano, then I will come back around.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, you can go with Mary. It should shut down for a few seconds. I don't know why it did that. Or I can ask a question, the questions I have right now.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, one of my questions is, what is the timeline for communicating the plan to the community?
So great. That's a great question, Ms. Bejarano. Thank you for that. We have been in regular communication with through the community, through both the schools as well as through the district side, through a variety of methods. But what we're really looking at for the next few weeks is what that's going to look like, is how do we communicate exactly what this district is going to be doing moving forward. So our plan is by July 1st to have a solid plan on what our online platform is going to look like, as well as what our in-school instruction is going to look like, and be able to communicate that out to families on July 1st. That will be followed up with a survey, a computer survey, as well as follow-up phone calls by staff members to those families that we did not get in contact with, to determine exactly what their plans are. Now, I will say that at the end of school, each campus had their teachers reach out to their families to get a sense where they were at as far as returning to school in August. And it was overwhelming as far everybody coming back to school in August. The problem with that is that's 2 months before, more than 2 months before school would actually open, and many things can change. And so we don't want to delay. We want to get as close to the date as possible as opening to get reliable data so we can determine exactly what our plans are. We want to take that information from the parent surveys and the family surveys, bring that back to the board. I am going to be asking the board to move the July board meeting to the 16th of July. So to the following, moving it up 1 week. So we can actually have the board make a decision on what we're going to do moving forward based on the data that we've got collected from the families. And then once we have that, then we can move that out to the community by the 25th, which is 11 days before school would actually start, saying, this is exactly what's going to happen. That'll give our staff time to plan, as well as get our schools in order for whatever that would look like. It would also give us a clearer idea of what we're seeing in the community as far as the virus spread, as far as the levels of comfort, and also to find out how many individuals and kids are still in the community coming back to our schools. And that will help us with the planning as well. So the month of July is very structured all the way from the 1st to the 25th with those timelines in place. I hope that answered your question.
Question for you, Superintendent King. You said the 16th. Do you mean
Correct.
the 14th?
I'm sorry, let me look at my calendar here. I thought it was the 16th, so I have my notes.
I think the 14th is the Tuesday.
That's what I'm looking for, is the 14th.
All right, additional questions?
I have, Marcus. Mr. King, can you just describe what the discussions have been regarding transportation for the upcoming school year?
There have been a lot of conversations around transportation, and this is one thing that a lot of districts are struggling with right now. Under current CDC guidelines and physical distancing, I've asked J.R. Rowland, who's our transportation director, to look into that, what we're seeing, and what we would be looking at as far as how many students we could transport at any given time. Under the current guidelines, and these may change anytime, we're actually already hearing that we're going down from 6 feet to 3 feet, which would change a lot of this as well. But on a 72 passenger bus, we are looking at putting in 14 kids on a 72 passenger bus. That is problematic. While we have buses, we have issues with drivers and that spacing out. If that changes to the 3 feet, then we can double that and get close to 30. What other districts are looking at doing, because like I said, we're all in the same boat as far as these go. One of the things they've been requesting out to the families, and this is going to be part of our survey, is how many of you are planning on transporting your children to school? And there's a district down in Phoenix that the initial indications that they have from that survey is upwards of 83% of their families are planning on bringing their kids to school. That would greatly ease up the burden. Now, it's a different demographic of their district, and we are going to look different, but we're going to be very specific on what that's going to look like. Another concern with the transportation as well is in protecting our drivers. The average age of our drivers is 58 years old, with some of our drivers in their 80s, which are very susceptible populations to the COVID-19. So how do we protect our drivers? And that's another thing we're looking at, working with our facilities department as well as transportation, to see what can we do, whether we're going to require the mask for the bus drivers, or we have the barriers, the plexiglass barriers that we're looking at. The issues with that is right now, there is no plexiglass to be found anywhere. I've got a lead on some out of Beaver Creek. I've been begging, borrow and stealing whatever we can, but that's another consideration as well. Another consideration is the sanitation of those buses after each run, morning and afternoon. If we're doing multiple runs, that would make it even far more complicated on how we're going to do that. We are looking at hand sanitizers on buses and protocols and procedures when those children get onto the bus. One of the things that's been thrown out there is the taking of temperatures. That might be a bridge too far as when those children are getting on the bus. But we will be asking those questions at the school when they get there as well. So buses are a major problematic, challenging situation in just getting the kids to school. So those are ongoing, and we're going to continue to get that information and get it out there. And a lot of it is going to be guided by how many kids we're going to have on those buses. Right now, we've had 3 bus drivers in the last couple of weeks resign. There are older drivers, they have resigned because of their health concerns, whether their own or whether close family members, which is understandable. We've also had an 82-year-old driver just passes and re-up his CDL for bus driving. So he wants to get back into the saddle, literally, and get driving again because of his compassion for kids. So transportation will be it's going to be an issue. Nothing about any of these things I'm describing are going to be easy. These are all going to be extremely challenging.
Superintendent King, this will also have an effect on start times, I'm assuming. In other words,
it very well could. And so one of the things we're looking at is that those staggered start times, if that means that's the direction we have to go. And another thing that we're looking at too is perhaps even phasing into this. And I'll get into that a little bit later as far as what that's going to look like. But it very well could. You know, they say the 2 things that dictate a lot of what schools do are transportation and food service. And it's never more so true than it is now, and just getting these kids to school. We're also looking and exploring the options of an organized ride share. So if families can ride together, we can maybe get more of those kids in the buses as well. So instead of 1 kid per seat, you get 3 kids as long as they're in the same family. That might increase it as well, but that also increases the complexity of, if you do have those staggered start times of, okay, if you got this kid in 6th grade and this kid in 1st grade, what are they going to do in the supervision that might be necessary? So what we're seeing is 1 answered question often leads to 10 more unanswered questions. And we're just going to continue going down that path to find as many answers as we can.
Mrs. Valenzuela, you had a question.
Yes, I'm concerned about the lunches, because will the teachers get a break because if they're going to eat lunches in the classroom?
So we had that discussion today in admin, and there is consensus, and there's also consensus in the Verde. We've also been doing the Verde Valley Soups. We are not looking to have lunches in the classroom at this time. We are looking at creating physical distancing, whether in the cafeterias or even outdoor seating areas. So that is off the table at this point.
Did you have another question, Mrs. Valenzuela?
No, that's fine. I was going to ask about transportation.
Okay. Mr. Manzenberger, you had a question.
Did you call me, Mr. Marcus?
I did.
Oh,
I just
yes.
said you had a question.
Actually, I have a couple of questions. What are the key components to an effective and rigorous sustainable online program, and how will it connect with classroom instruction? I know this has kind of been a new experience this last quarter.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and briefly move to my couch because I can't see a thing as the sunshine has finally made its way around the mountain and it's hitting my office here and blinding me. So can you repeat that question, Mr. Brandenburg?
Yeah, what are the key components going to be to an effective and rigorous sustainable online program, and how will that connect with what's going on in the classroom?
So what we are planning on as an admin team right now is always looking to see how do we get children back into the classroom as quickly as possible. And as we're following these dual tracks, this online track as well as this in-class track, how do we match those up as closely as possible so they're not just complementary, but when those kids come back to the school, whenever their parents are ready, whether it's September, whether it's October, whether it's November, whatever that is, they're at or near the same spot in the curriculum as they would have been otherwise. So creating those parallel tracks, the online curriculum matching up with what's happening in the in-person schooling is absolutely vitally important, but not just from a curricular point of view. The other key piece is making sure that those relationships between the school and the home life are established. I'm sorry?
I didn't say no, that wasn't me.
You broke up a little bit.
So building and maintaining those relationships between the students who are on the online track and the students and the staff and the teachers and the school of those in the in-person is going to become absolutely vital. So there's a lot of pieces to that. So to that end, one of the things we're looking at is building our own curriculum through our own existing curriculum and Google Classroom, as well as some other types of platforms that might be beneficial in developing that, but also looking at off-the-shelf types of curriculums. And so one of the things we're looking at is Edgenuity and how that would support our existing curriculum. And we're also looking at the Florida virtual curriculum. And we're getting a lot of these concepts and this direction from what Dysart is doing. And I know that Ms. Bejarano is here, and I do want to thank her again for that connection that we made. It's been very, very, it's growing and producing fruit for us right there. But creating as much comprehension between the two different tracks of our online is going to be key. It also has to be rigorous. What we did in the last 9 weeks of school, while it was good, it is not what you would want to find in an effective online learning environment as a whole. The level of interaction, the level of rigor, it's got to be far more comprehensive. And that's also what we're hearing from the state. If we're going this direction, we're developing our own programs, then that has to be directly correlated to the scope and sequence and the pacing of what we're doing in the classroom in general. So that's going to have to be crucial as well in developing that, and standards-based, of course. We also have some challenges with our students in our community that may not have access to internet. So if we're going to have this effective and rigorous curriculum, they have to have access, and that has been an ongoing issue with us. And our tech department pushed out nearly 300 Chromebooks, which was great, but Chromebooks are only good for anything if you have an internet connection, and we have struggled with that in the community. We'll continue to work with internet providers, and we're making some progress with it, but there are still huge gaps in the equity, and there are still many students that don't have the ability to do that. So there's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle as well, but we have to give those families a choice, because I think when we come back in August, there are going to be a substantial numbers of families. Statewide, a poll just came out last week that said over 33% of families are either strongly opposed to sending their child back or opposed to sending their child back to school. So we have to give that level of comfort to whatever that is, and we see in our community. I don't suspect that it would be that high in our community, but we could see upwards between 15–20% of kids staying at home. And it's vitally important that we keep them connected as closely as possible to our schools. And that's where that interaction comes in. It's not just where you put a curriculum out there and say, okay, work at your own pace and forget about them. You check in once a month. No, it has to be daily. You have to maintain those relationships, so when they do come back, that's the good place for kids, is at school.
And Mr. Mansberger, I know you have another question, but I just want to follow up on what you just asked. I just think it's absolutely critical, and we've talked about this before, that the curriculum, that the online education be robust and rigorous,
Right.
that it be better than what they can get at one of these other online schools, and that it be fully integrated with our classroom instruction, as you pointed out, so that a parent who's not comfortable coming back in August, but might be comfortable coming back in October, can do that. And that requires, I know, a lot more work, but I think that it will pay substantial dividends when we can tell parents, hey, you can go to Primavera, but if you do something like that,
Right.
then you can't come back. If you do this, you can come back. You can go back and forth and still get a very high quality COCSD education.
That's right. And that's what has to be very distinctive from any of the options, because there are options out there for families to go to if they'd like to pursue that. So we have to be very distinctive and say how this is connected to the best possible experience that they can actually see in their classrooms as well, until they're ready to come back, and to reintegrate them and transition them with as little consternation as possible.
Mr. Mansberger, you had a second question.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have this relationship with Dysart. I've had an opportunity several years ago to work with the district, and they're really on top of things with the technology. And so I'm really glad we have that relationship now. The other thing I had with the technology that we have in the district currently, how is that going to be able to support these different scenarios during in this new year?
That's a fantastic question, Mr. Mansberger. Our district is in a much, much better spot than many districts. For the last 10 years, long before I came here, this district heavily invested in technology and is paying very good dividends right now as we're looking at things. Kathy Epperson has her crew, and I see Kathy here right now, and so correct me if I say anything incorrect, but they are doing inventory of our devices, and we are at or very near one-to-one in our devices. Now that's very important, because one of the things we're looking at as far as sanitation, if we continue down the path of carts like we have done, classroom carts or and disbursement like that, that creates a sanitation and cleaning issue. But if every child has their own laptop, then they become responsible for that and they carry that with them. Now that has other problems, of course, secondary that go along with it, is you really want to put a laptop in the hands of every kindergartner or first grader for that matter. But it also gives us the ability for those students to work from home if we do have to go into a modified shutdown or a partial day or whatever that looks like, then they'll still be able to access that, at least have the device to access that. And then we continue to work on with our internet. Our servers are in good shape, so our Wi-Fi is in good shape. Overall, our district technology is in outstanding shape. And if you look at the Tyler SIS program as well, we're also looking for the compatibility of that with our AOI program. Back in 2011, Cottonwood-Oak Creek applied for and has maintained its AOI. The AOI platform is what is very well could be a huge lifesaver for this district, because what that allows us to do is provide online programming, enroll kids in that programming, and then to actually get paid to continue their educations. There aren't all districts have that, and the timelines for applying for a new one, they're stretching those out, but it's expensive, it's long. We don't have to do any of that. We have that in place for K-12, not just K-8. We have that in place for K-12. So that is giving us a little bit of an advantage right now. That's one less thing that we don't have to worry about. So like I said, technology for this district is a strength, and we're going to play into that strength as much as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Mrs. Valenzuela, did I see that you had another question?
I didn't get I couldn't pull up my questions. I'm having trouble with my computer, so I didn't get it. So will you ask it for me, Eric?
Sure.
Good.
You had indicated that you were interested in what the curricular models will look like to maintain or advance the rigor of instruction in the district.
So yeah, so I touched on that a little bit as far as what we're looking at right now. We're looking at those off-the-shelf curriculums as well as our own in-house built curriculums. We have not made any decision on what the recommendation to the board is going to be on that. It's going to be a cost factor involved, but it's also going to be a time factor involved. But it's also going to be what's in the best interest of the kids and what's going to support them with that long-term goal of getting every kid back into the classroom. What is best going to support those kids' needs? So that is what is going to be the telling as far as the base curriculum goes. That's what's going to determine that. But to go back again, there has to be the distinction that this district's going to put out is there's going to be that connection to school, not just, okay, you're enrolled in this AOI program, great. It's got to be, I know who my teacher is. I had a conversation with a teacher. I might even be zooming into that class so I can get to know the kids before I even go back to class. So I'm engaging in social activities with them, or maybe good things in the morning, whatever that looks like. Now, there are certain privacy issues with that we'll have to overcome because of the video involved in that. But I don't think any of them present too much of an obstacle that we can't surmount at this time. But there's got to be, I can't emphasize it enough, there has to be this maintain the connection to school. All the work of this district, not all of the work, but a great deal of this work in the district in the last 5 years has been about building and sustaining relationships with one another as well as with our families and children. We can't let that go, and we have to look at this as an opportunity to continue to build upon that. Even if they are distant, how do we maintain those supports for kids? And that's what's going to make this district distinctive and serve our community the best.
Superintendent King, along those lines, how are you looking at continuing the social and emotional supports that you were just talking about?
Yeah, again, we believe that the key is to academic success and later life success is in building these schools that are loving, caring, and compassionate. And it has been challenging in the last 9 weeks to maintain those relationships because distance matters. It's hard when you can't shake a kid's hand or give a kid a hug or go into Miss Fuller's kindergarten classroom and get all those hugs from those little ones. That's tough. So how do we do that? So looking towards next year, the focus zones will continue. We're looking at the counseling position that we have out at Oak Creek. Capturing Kids' Hearts will continue. It may very well be modified in some ways, but that will continue. And we also have responsive classrooms coming back with additional trainings over the summer to get more of our teachers trained in that. That is not going away. This is a fundamental belief of this district that the key to a kid's head is through their hearts. And we have to maintain those connections to kids. And we're as committed to that now as we ever have been in the past.
Have we reached out? I'm sorry. Have we reached out to the Capturing Kids' Hearts people to see, do they have some modifications to their programs to adapt to this environment? Because obviously it's not just our district, it's every district.
I think they have some. I will follow up with that as well. I can't really answer that. I know that Ms. Woodward has been in contact with them, and we do have trainings planned for later on in July. I know a key piece of Capturing Kids' Hearts is shaking the kids' hands, and I think that's going to be a little bit too much when we first come back. But the underlying philosophy and the approach to kids and the asking of the questions and getting them to be more self-reflective individuals and is going to continue on. So I'll follow up with that, Mr. Marcus. That's a great question.
And talking about when we first come back, what are some of the considerations that you have for the first days of school?
Yeah, and that's going to be key as well. It is not, beginning of school is not going to look like any other beginning of school ever. And when I think about the beginning of school, the first thing I think of are little kinders coming to school for the first time, or first graders who may have had their experience in kindergarten cut short a little bit in the prior year. How do we teach them what they need to know going forward? It's not the typical stuff. We're gonna have a lot more additional protocols that they're gonna have to place. How do you go to the bathroom? How do you get there? How do you walk in the hallway? Which of the ways the hallway do you go down? How do we create those conditions? And so that's going to vary a lot by each individual school. And I will say that each school has its own challenges. For example, Ms. Vaca's school at DDB, that's a school that is all inside. That has a few more disadvantages than the schools that have more of the outdoor kind of setting. So that's going to be unique as well. So each school is going to develop their own plan for what those protocols are going to look like. But when those kids come back, how do we maintain, I want them to feel loved when they walk in the door. How do you do that? And those are questions that we're gonna be looking at, but it's not gonna be right down, okay, let's get down to testing. Think about this, these kids have been out of school. By the time they come back to us, they've been out of school for 5 months. That's a lot of time out of school, and that's a lot of time where they've lacked that connectivity. These kids have been going through a trauma, just like everybody has been going through a trauma these last few months. They have it as well. Many of these kids can't understand what they have. So the context, putting those things in context. And to that end, Ms. Vaca has been leading a task force on social wellness. And they are coming up with the plans of how we do talk to kids and how we have those conversations, how we set those protocols without increasing the trauma. And one of my great fears is that we're, as adults, unregulated to the point where we transfer that off to children. We have to understand that kids aren't going to do things perfectly because they're children. And that's okay. We have to let those kinds of things go. We just have to be patient with them. We have to be patient with ourselves, and we have to show everyone a certain level of grace when we come back, and be patient with each other.
Mr. King, have you considered the idea of an earlier start with the idea of an orientation that's outside of just traditional education, but just dealing with some of the issues you talked about? Which way do you go to the bathroom? How do you walk? Which halls can you use? Maybe and maybe that kind of an orientation with just a smaller grade sets. You know, one day for one grade level, one day for another grade level, things of that sort.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things that we're looking at is a phased opening. Now, there's certain situations with that. We did talk a little bit about that today with admin, but bringing the kinders back and start to phase in. Now, what other countries have done when they've brought schools back, when they brought kids back to schools, is there's two different approaches to it. One is they've started with the little ones and worked their way up, and that's what they did in France. In Denmark, I think it is, they started with their older kids and brought them back first, and then started phasing in from the top down to give them that ability. What I would like to see, the advantage of that more than anything, is I would like to see the younger kids, if we can make it work. And there are certain conditions that would have to happen, and we'd have to mitigate some certain circumstances to make this happen. But let's say we bring these K2 kids back first. You're reducing the total number of kids, because one of the concerns I have is you open back up DDD, you got 600 kids, and that's going to be tough. But if you start with 150 kids, it might be a little bit easier. You'll still have the same amount of staff, a little bit easier to phase back in that way. And just so you can have a little bit more hands and eyes on what's happening to go through those procedures until they get it back, to kind of ease into it. I think Jess uses the term that long runway for that launch. Isn't that what you use, Jess? I don't see you anymore. There you are. That long runway for the launch kind of thing.
Soft start with a long runway.
There you go. So those are under considerations. There are details. The key detail affiliated with that is they don't start the school year until the first day that they show up. So every day that kid misses school is a day that we're not taking in the revenue to support, and revenue is going to be key in the coming year to sustain all of our programs. But that's not insurmountable either. If that's the direction we want to go and we feel it vital, then I think that is the direction we need to go.
I'd like to ask my fellow board members if anyone else has any other questions on this topic.
I have Mary? Anyhow,
No, that wasn't me.
Oh, I have a question back to transportation. As I just flew in from North Carolina, what the airlines do is they made us wear the mask while we were on the planes, the whole length of time. I don't know if that would be feasible for the parents that are going to send their kids on the buses, if we can ask them to provide a mask for the child, or if we can provide them, or something of that nature. But anyhow, it was a thought. So I wanted to.
Yeah, so it's not a bad thought at all, Ms. Rollins. One of the challenges is going to be with masks with young children, or with any children, is them keeping it on. I know as an adult myself, it becomes very cumbersome and gets old very quickly. And
right.
So we have those discussions. Do you make them? Now, one of the things we're looking at, and all Verde Valley superintendents, I don't see how it would work if we mandated masks in the classrooms at school all day long. That doesn't mean we can't make that a choice, but how do you mandate it and enforce that to a point where that's all you're doing is policing little kindergartners with masks all the time?
Right.
I think there will be some level of we're not going to eliminate all the risk. And is that really going to eliminate all the risk? Now, the buses, on the other hand, are maybe a little bit different. Now, we do know that the research is showing that children are not as affected by COVID as adults, but they very well may be asymptomatic carriers of that, which is a concern as well. And that's one thing that we're going to need to address with our staff across the board, whether they're teachers, bus drivers, cafe, whoever they are, all of our staff. And that's why the need to protect those drivers is so vital as well, because many of them are in those vulnerable populations. And I will also say that most of them, almost nearly all of them, are just raring to go as well. That is not necessarily a concern of theirs, because their sense of service to the community is so high. I do know that some other districts are looking at mandating masks, at least on the bus, but as Ms. Wackers pointed out, how long can you put a middle schooler in a mask until it goes, they shoot it across the bus, and then you've got additional issues.
Point.
So, and I understand that, and we're looking at all those things, but many of these things are going to come down to practicality, as well as safety, and they're going to come down to the individual family's choice. If by its nature, so one of the challenges that we are facing right now is the CDC came out with their guidelines, and their guidelines classified behaviors or conditions of school into low, medium, and high risk. Low being you're staying at home on your internet, completely and totally physically isolated from every other human being. That's a low risk. We know that that's a low risk. High risk is school. That's how they phrased it. If you bring kids back to school, that's a high risk. Well, that becomes a problem, because how do we communicate to our community? We are looking to mitigate all of these risks, but regardless, we cannot take away all the risks involved with school. At some point, that choice is going to have to be made. And we're going to communicate what we're doing, the sanitation procedures. We're going to communicate the protocols we have for physical distancing. We're going to be looking to keeping these kids as separate as possible, or as contained to certain groups as possible, not to spread that out. But at some point, we need to get these kids back to school, and we need to do the best job that we possibly can. Or the option is everybody stays home forever. So we just need to mitigate those factors that are going up to the best of our ability. And another thing that's going to impact this as well, Ms. Rollins, is cost. There just came out a study that to meet all of the CDC guidelines, whatever they are, and they're this thick, to meet all those guidelines, it's going to cost $490 per child to put all those things in place. All the protocols, all the sanitation, all the PPE, everything for a year. Well, $490 per kid for this district is nearly $1 million. And that's $1 million that we do not have to make that happen. So what are we going to do? We're going to do the best of everything to our ability. We're going to communicate that out to our community. This is what we're doing. If you're not comfortable coming back to school, we have not just a viable online, we have an attractive online option to continue your child's education until such a time that you feel comfortable bringing your child back. And that's how we're going to do it. And we're going to do it as economically as we can, not because we want to, but because we have to. That's the situation we're in. Our mission to educate children needs to continue.
Thank you. Do we have any other board questions?
I have one.
Please.
So like one of our options is reopening as normal, and then we get shut down again.
Yes.
But right now we're looking at, you have the option of coming or doing this online platform.
Correct.
Is this online platform gonna just be is it gonna be done, or is it gonna be kind of just done along the way? So what happens, if we do get shut down, are all of these kids in each grade level gonna just be able to stay home and go right
Yes.
smoothly?
That is a great question, Ms. Bejarano, and that's exactly what we're planning for. We have to be ready for the contingency that we come back in whatever shape or form, and then we go back into shutdown. That is a very real possibility. That's why we're doing the inventory of the one-to-one devices, so we can make sure that those go out. But there's also another piece to that as well, and that's why we're looking at that off-the-shelf curriculum. Now, the issue with off-the-shelf curriculum is oftentimes it's a site license. It could be an individual school site, it could be a district site, or it could be a per-kid basis. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with that survey to find out how many of our families are interested in going down that route, and to determine that cost and how we can cover that moving forward. But we also have to be ready, whatever we choose. So let's say we go with Edgenuity. Now, I don't know what the cost on that is yet, but let's say it's $100 a kid. Well, that's $200,000 for 2,000 kids. And would we be realistically able to do that? We very well may. But it just can't be, we've got this platform, we're going to throw it out there. We have to have that personal support back from the teachers. But everything that we're doing and planning and talking about is the online program or platform, whatever we have, is that going to be able to support nearly all the kids if we do go back into lockdown? But again, the problem with that is, do the families have the resources to even do that? Whether it's the online, we can give them Chromebooks all day long, but do they have the hot spots or whatever else that they're going to need for? And another thing that we found too is that it's not just the technology, it's the wherewithal and the time in the home to find the time to get those things done. That is also a huge challenge, and that's one of the things we learned from the past 9 weeks, is it's not just the technology side, it's the ability for them to work on it for whatever reason. Let's say you've got a family with 5 children and you're working all day and they're just trying to survive. And we have to
Right.
get out of that mode of just surviving. So how can we provide the supports? And that's why we have to raise the level of our training. As you're going to see, we've got quite a few trainings happening in the month of July to get all of us up to speed on what it really means to create a viable and effective online learning platform, because it's got to be different. But that's a
Yeah.
great question. That's one of the questions that keep me awake at night. How do you manage it if we do go back into lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody did a great job in the 9
Absolutely.
weeks, but
Absolutely.
I don't think that's acceptable moving forward, because if we have to be prepared for it, because it's not going to be all of a sudden. It's not going to be Sunday we're in school, Monday we're not.
Yep.
And we don't want to lose those kids to Primavera or
Right.
a K-12 because we're not set up, and they don't want to waste another 9 weeks, 12 weeks, or whatever it is.
Yep. We have to be able to drop into it in minutes notice. Absolutely.
Now, funding wise, if we have the online program, is it just the kid is in our district and we get the money, but if they go somewhere else, we lose that funding?
That pretty much sums it up. Yes, ma'am. And if they are in our AOI program, it receives a little bit less funding than if they were in our classroom. But still, it's close enough that it would be helpful to our district. But yeah, that's the other issue. If we start losing kids because they're going to another option, that becomes problematic as well, and the decrease in revenue. So that's very well thought of.
Superintendent King, you raised an interesting issue I hadn't thought about before, which was what happens if you have students who just are in a home environment in which they can't learn. I mean, it's just not a good place for them to be. Have we considered the idea of a socially distanced, I call it a study hall kind of environment?
So one of the things we're looking at right now is even if we do come back to school as regular, we still have this open. One of the considerations we're looking at is actually utilizing the DO gym. We can probably get quite a few computers in there to use that as an accessible spot for them, as well as perhaps other places that I haven't thought of around the district. But that is something that we're looking at as well. I don't know how much it would get used. But if we can find that out through a survey, but to maintain those connections, because they're also going to have to travel there for these kids. For many of them at home, if they're not doing the work, oftentimes they're not able to get anywhere as well. But that's something we need to make available somehow.
So in that survey, we need to really be clear to the parents about the various different options.
Yes.
I've got one other question, and then I'll open up to see if anyone else has any. But I'm curious about, when we think about the funding issues, which we've talked a little bit about, clearly, there are so many variables here. How many teachers are coming back? How many students are coming back? What's the ADM formula going to be? But at least in terms of number of teachers and students, how are we reaching out to both families and to teachers to find out who's really committed to coming back?
So I know that's happening at the school level, and those principals are having conversations with their staff as well. And they also have the teachers reach out to the families to find out where they're at. And that's why I said earlier, overwhelming, they say they're going to be coming back. The issue with it right now is it's too far away for us to get good data to determine what the direction we have moving forward. So that's why we're looking for that July 2nd date, which is not too far away actually from this point. We're probably looking at 2-3 weeks, but then that'll give us time to put those things together. I do have a concern about teachers. I know that I've had conversations with teachers, especially in the last 3 weeks, and to a person, they're all planning on coming back. They understand what the job is. I do think that that is going to be an issue perhaps, and I know that other districts are discussing that, is that if not this, then that. And teaching very much is becoming a high-risk occupation right now, and it's teaching. So we're going to have a clear idea on what that's going to look like as we move forward. But I know that in those conversations I've had with the principals, they're not hearing anything of their teachers not coming back at all, and they are very tight. I know they just had meetings last Friday. So that's where we're at with that.
Do we have any other questions from members of the board? All right, then let's move on. Thank you. That was an excellent update, Superintendent King. I appreciate all the work that's going on, and I'll actually mention that later in the agenda. But for now, let's go on to item 4.01, discussion on the 301 performance payout.
All right, thank you, President Marcus. In discussing the 301 pay for performance, I just want to highlight again that we are talking about Fund 012, but there are actually 3 funds that make up the 301 Classroom Site Fund. Fund 011 is 20% of the fund that is paid out to teachers in the fall. Fund 013 is an additional 40% that is paid out to teachers throughout the school year as the funding becomes available from the state. And then the final fund that we're discussing this evening is Fund 012, which is pay for performance. And I chair the 301 committee that is comprised of teachers from all of our sites in the district. Every year, the 301 committee convenes to discuss where we're at for 301 overall. And then we take the recommendations that the 301 committee has back to the sites. And then we have the teachers vote across the district. And we are looking for a 75% approval rate across the district. For the last 2 years, 3 years actually, our teachers have approved our 301 plan above 90%. Last year, we were at 96% approval. And so within your governing board packet this evening, you have Trish Winters provided the COCSD 301 performance comparison between school year 18-19 and 19-20. And that breaks down the categories of ineffective, developing, effective, and highly effective. And that within the Fund 012, we're actually looking at 2 parts. We are looking at 50% teacher observation, and then we're looking at 50% professional development and leadership. 301 is enacted by the voters through a sales tax, and then legislatively we have some requirements. One of the requirements of 301 on the pay for performance is that the ultimate goal is to increase student achievement. And so teachers have to complete their formal observations with their principals, and depending on their level of experience with the district, they're going to complete 1 or 2. New teachers complete 2. And then in addition to that, our teachers are required to complete 25 hours of leadership or professional development. The nice thing about that is the principal can then work with the teacher to develop a plan. And then it also gives the teachers the autonomy and empowers them to really go into areas that they may be interested in, areas that they may seek professional development. But when you look at the comparison between 18-19 and 19-20, you will find that we have some teachers that are falling we have a higher percentage of teachers falling in the highly effective. We actually did not have any teachers fall in the ineffective this year. At the bottom of the graph, you will see that there's an asterisk for teachers who are new hires for the district. Within our 301 plan, we do give teachers a 1-year reprieve. If they fall into the developing area, that they still would receive 100% of their 301 pay for performance summer payout. So this year, we did have 7 teachers fall within the developing category. 5 of those were first-year teachers in the district. President Marcus or governing board members, do you have any questions about 301?
Board members, any questions?
No. Thank you for all your hard work.
So, Mrs. Woodward, has this been submitted to a vote of the teachers yet?
Given the COVID-19 situation, we have decided to wait until the fall when teachers return to approve the plan for next year.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
All right, then we'll move on to 4.02. Thank you very much, Mrs. Woodward. Thank you for the leadership. Thank you for the hard work. And thank you to the team that developed all of this. Let's move to 4.02, update on summer professional growth offerings. And we stay with you, Mrs. Wood.
Right. So we are in a unique situation this summer. Typically, when we are looking to develop our professional development and professional growth throughout the year and in the summer, we work closely as an administrative team with our principals, with Dr. Alley, Kathy Epperson, Amy Romero, who's on the call this evening as well, and really looking at the comprehensive needs assessment that comes from Arizona Department of Education that helps us to complete our integrated action plan. We are required to complete, all sites are required to complete, and then as the district as well. And in completing our comprehensive needs assessment, looking at our district data, both academic and social emotionally, we really see trends in patterns on professional development areas that we would like to further our growth in. And then this year, specifically related to the pandemic, we have some new challenges that we will be looking at next year, specifically related to technology and then also related to the social emotional needs of our students. So in planning this year, it really was an effort that we worked together closely as a governing or as an admin team, input from sites, teachers, and what we ended up with this summer, specifically related to coming back in the fall under the pandemic. You will see that we have responsive practices. We have a mindfulness book study that is led currently by Dr. Elaine Rankin on a book by Dr. Bruce Perry. And then we also have Daring Leadership, which is both classroom and outside of the classroom, social, emotional, and leadership support that will be available to our teachers by the work of Dr. Brene Brown. We also have the crisis prevention that Dr. Alley puts on every year that is a support. We have Capturing Kids' Hearts as well. And then Kathy Epperson has put together 3 phenomenal Google Classroom technology related professional development, professional growth offerings that teachers can go through on a self-paced that she's going to be offering some Zoom sessions. In addition to that, we always have some curriculum offerings as well. This summer, we have 3-dimensional science related to the new Arizona 2018 science standards that we had a 3-year timeline implementation. We also have Tyler Sis training this summer as well. We have standards-based grading. We are in our 2nd year of project-based learning. We'll send a new cohort of 30 teachers through in July. So despite the challenges of the pandemic, we were able to continue with professional growth. We typically have a very comprehensive offering in the summer. We incentivize through professional growth in 301. And we were able to move a lot of things onto Google Classroom, to Zoom, so that we could continue still meeting the needs of our comprehensive needs assessment and district integrated action plan.
Do we have any questions from members of the board?
No.
Okay. Not hearing any, I'll pose one for you. Either for Mrs. Woodward or for Superintendent King. First off, I'm really impressed with the menu. A lot of really good programs. And I can see where some teachers would benefit more from some things than others. And I'm wondering if our principals play a role in making recommendations to teachers that say, you know, you can certainly sign up for whatever you want, understand that, but based on where you are and how you're doing, this program would really be outstanding for you. Do we do any of that?
Principals, I'm gonna pass that over to you. I know specifically that I've had conversations with each of you in regards to teachers that you have recommended for certain professional development. Would anyone like to speak to that?
I can start. A few of us I know have some mid-year data goals with our teachers where we talk about some of their goals towards professional development. So when we discuss it with them, we kind of look at what they're looking for and then try to match them up and say, oh yeah, hey, you know, we want this. And I know before.
I think we may have lost Mrs. Prasad.
She's frozen. Mhm.
But
Mrs.
the gist of this is, I'm assuming the answer is yes. This is something that principals work with their teachers on once the menu comes out.
Correct, yes. And I was going to say, I was going to have Mrs. Vaca speak, but I know last year she specifically had a cohort of teachers that she recommended go through the project-based learning. It was an initiative that she was looking at in her 7-8. And so I think there very much are individual conversations that go on related to a teacher's growth. And some of our teachers, they're looking to absorb anything. Other teachers may be at a certain point within their career where they would benefit, and principals have that insight to be able to guide and support their growth as a teacher.
I just think that's especially true as we move to the kind of platform that you and Superintendent King are putting together for online, where some of our teachers may not have very much experience into how do you teach online. And we know that it's a whole lot more than just taking a curriculum and posting it, you know, to a board. That teaching online is not exactly the same in terms of the techniques as teaching in person. And seeing some of the programs on here, I think that provide that. It's not just the technology, it's how to use the technology to capture kids' hearts, to really make this work. So thank you. Any other board questions?
I do. On some of them, there's a cost. Does the school district pick up the cost?
So there are different answers. Sometimes teachers actually pay the cost, just like they would pay for college credit, and then that enables them to collect professional growth towards salary advancement. Some of the initiatives are specific district initiatives that are written into our integrated action plan, such as standards-based grading. And so the district then is able to absorb the cost for that.
Great. Thank you, Jamie.
Of course.
All right. Unless I hear another question, we're going to thank Mrs. Woodward again for her work in this area. I think this is a really robust set of professional development, and I thank you for that. Let's move to 5.01, legislative issues. Superintendent King.
Yes, thank you, President Marcus. Yes, there are some updates since the last time we spoke, or the last time I gave you an update. What we had been led to believe and what we had been told back in April and May when the legislature was looking to adjourn, which they did, was that they were looking to come back in June to discuss at a special session, discuss a variety of topics related to the needs of the schools moving forward. That has now been sidelined. The only session that we're looking for in June is the legislature will be coming back on the 22nd of June to discuss the skinny budget that they had passed back in April. And they are waiting until that week of June because they are waiting for the latest updates from the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, which will have the tax revenue projections going back into March, April, May, even part of June. And then they'll make the determinations on their budgets. Now that puts us in a little bit of a pickle because I know that I think on the 23rd, and David, correct me if I'm incorrect, or Trish, but we're looking to have a special board meeting of this board to approve the budget for the 2021 school year. More than likely that would need to be amended later on. So they are pushing out all of the other special sessions for the special dispensations that we need for them to run our schools until at least August is what we are hearing. And that's late August. They're waiting till after the primaries. So politics is going to play a big part in this right now. And I guess the legislators need time to go out and campaign, or perhaps they don't necessarily want to go on the record for whatever decisions that they may make that are necessary, but that's going to put us in a difficult situation of not having needed policy decisions and changes to Title 15 prior to the opening of school. So the only legislative update I have for you right now is what I know is that on the week of the 22nd is they're going to come back for a special session that is only going to be discussing budget.
All right. Do we know what the ADM formula is going to be? Do we have any ideas at this point?
We do not. We do not. Now, what it does not portend well for is that if the only thing that they, is already a skinny budget, then they called it a skinny budget for a reason. And we do know that some projections of the JLBC are saying that sales tax revenues are down upwards of 20%. And we also know that sales taxes fund our schools to a large degree. So they are only meeting on the budget. I don't know what that's going to look like. I always have great hope for everything. But I will be watching very closely what that's going to come back at. But we do not have any indication at all. We have met with Senator Allen a couple times now in the last couple weeks. And what they are looking at are a couple different options, but I don't know how viable they're going to be. It's going to be driven by what the revenues are. One of the discussions that I think is off the table now is going back to prior year funding. I would love that, if we would know at least where we stood with the budgets. I don't believe that that's going to happen. 2 weeks ago, they were looking at holding harmless. The biggest decrease the district could take would be 2%, regardless of their drop in enrollment or whatever other budget decisions are being made. I went away for a week, and when I came back, that 2% was now 5%. So I'm try not to go away again anytime soon. They might hold us even more. So I don't believe that they have the numbers that they need to make their decisions. And I think there is and this is all conjecture on my part, I believe there is great reluctance to make decisions right now prior to the primary, because it is an election year, and that has a huge impact on anybody who must get elected. The primary is where it's at.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Marcus.
Yeah, I just want to interject, and maybe this can answer Mr. Marcus' question. Maybe, I don't know if you meant, we do have a per pupil funding amount to build a budget. We do have that amount. Right now we're discussing, and the budget that we'll be building will be on a reduction of about 50 students. And in conversations with Mr. King, that's what we saw last year. We're going to use that as our baseline to develop this budget and just work with that.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if 50 is enough, and if we want to have, if we said 50 leave, but X number move to AOI, which is a slight reduction in ADM, do we factor that in as well?
Well, I think that the approach we're taking is that we saw a reduction in 50 last year. We're going to use that this year and have available funds to be very, very flexible going forward, not knowing how the state's going to, if they'll continue this funding or they'll have further reductions. So I think that the key is just going to be very, very flexible in what we're going to be able to do going forward.
All right. Any board questions?
No.
No.
Mr. Marcus?
Yes.
Yeah, it was my understanding that the state of Arizona received $440 million that could be used between the counties and cities and state. Mr. King, do you know anything about that? And has that been put into this particular situation?
So it does not go into the regular budget. And what Mr. Magensberger is referring to is the CARES Act. And the CARES Act were the dollars that were sent out to the different states and allocated using the title formulas. Our state got about $250 million that were distributed out to the schools. Our share of that, which we just received, our allocation the week before last, I should say, was around $400,000. Of that $400,000, we're obligated to share some of that with the private schools around here, utilizing, the good news was the old Title I formula, not the new one advocated by certain people, which would give them full funding out to the private schools. So our share of that was around $360,000, $370,000. That covers expenses that were related to the shutdown and the COVID, either this year or moving forward into next year. It's not part of the regular formula, the M&O formula. So we do have those, and we are looking and prioritizing lists. One of the things we're looking at is if we do go for an off-the-shelf curriculum, that would be one of the expenses that we would want to take out of those dollars moving forward. We'd also want to use those dollars to create whatever sanitation barriers we need or extra supplies along those lines. But any costs associated with COVID-19, as I said before, the projected cost to make our schools meet the compliance of the CDC would be about $1 million. So we received less than what we would, half of what we would need to make that happen. But that's what that's referring to. The state dollars that went out to the towns and the counties, those are separate funds, and those are more at the discretion of what the governor wants to do with it. The governor also does have about, I think, $13 million in his own discretionary fund for schools. And I don't know how he's planning on using it. And to go back to real quick to one thing, of course, what David said is we have the budget numbers that we have. We've had those for quite some time. My concern is though that the changes with the legislative session, they can go back and change anything that they want to. And so that's why we're keeping a very close eye, and that may mean an amended budget later on.
Do we have any other board questions?
No.
No.
All right. Then we will move on to item, I believe we're up to 9.01. Is that correct, Mrs. Winters?
That is correct, Mr. Marcus.
All right, information discussion agenda item, board report. I'm just going to go around, and if you have something, say your piece, and if you don't, just say pass. Mr. Manzenberger. Mr. Manzenberger says no. Okay. Mrs. Valenzuela.
Yes, I just want to thank the staff, the whole staff for the great job they did, and for the promotion exercises, but for all the hard work that they're doing, especially Mr. King and Trish. Thank you.
Mrs. Rollins.
Yes, I too would like to thank all staff for the wonderful job they've done in this crisis. It shows what the human nature can do when it must.
Mrs. Bejarano?
Again, just to reiterate that, just thanking everybody for jumping right in and keeping it going and looking for great opportunities for the kids for the fall.
Thank you. And I'd just like to make a couple of comments. First, I thought the promotions were outstanding. And I think that our principals and our administration really stepped up and created some lasting memories that our children will carry forward for many, many years to come. But I also want to just express my sense of how the administration, and I refer to that as all of our principals, all of our staff, classified, our food service, I know Victoria's here, our buses, everything. You know, it's hard to imagine there being more variables this late in the year. You know, we're less than 2 months away from starting a new semester, and we don't really know how many teachers are coming back, how many students are coming back, what the funding formula is really going to be, what the CDC rules and state ordered rules are going to be. I mean, it's hard to imagine more balls being up in the air than we have right now. And I just want to say, working with Superintendent King, our principals, Mrs. Woodward, members of the organization, I couldn't be more proud to be associated with this group. I have tremendous confidence in our leadership, and it's, you know, we can't make decisions today. We can't probably make decisions even at our next meeting because there are so many of these variables that are unknown. But the one thing that I feel very good about is knowing that under Superintendent King's leadership, this organization has thought through the possibilities, the various different plans, A, B, C, D, et cetera, that put us in the position of not needing to be overly anxious because we have thought through all of the options. And when these things finally do become apparent to us as to what all these numbers are going to be, we will be in the best possible position to make the right choices. So thank you for giving us that kind of confidence, Superintendent King and the organization. All right. I'm moving on to 10.01. And I'm not sure how we want to do this. Superintendent King, give us some guidance as to how you want to proceed with this. This is discussion of superintendent's performance evaluation. Do we want to go through the handouts that you've given us? I'm not sure what the best way of moving forward on this is.
Well, it definitely makes it tricky by doing this in Zoom and not in person. But I do know that you've all received the instrument or the rating scale instrument. Is that accurate? Does everyone have that in front of them?
Yeah.
And you also have the goals that were laid out with the progress or lack thereof towards those. Maybe you want to start with the different goals that you would approve back in October or whenever that was. That might be a good place to start.
All right, let me pull that up. So the goals that we had were family and community communications, embedding restorative practices, and school safety and security. Do board members have any comments on any of these three that they would like to share at this point?
I think that's good. Way to go. No?
I don't.
Don't all jump at once.
I don't either. I'm just trying to figure it out.
I read through them and I did good. Now,
Mr. Marcus, Mr. Marcus?
Yes.
I'm going to make a suggestion here, only because I think that this format it makes this especially difficult. I think what this board likes to do is what I've experienced in the past is have those discussions and maybe bounce things off of each other. And I know that Mr. Manzenberger did ask me if we could go, and I think I forwarded that to you, Mr. Marcus, if we could go back to an in-person meeting. Perhaps it might be better to table, and I'm fine with that. It might be better to table it until maybe you can even add it on to the special budget session. We can add it on however you want to there, which is on I think the 23rd, or even July. It's just a suggestion. I'm not stuck on either way. I just think it might be more conducive to having that conversation and to discuss my performance then. And I would be fine with that if that's what you choose.
And if we do that, that has an impact on your performance pay? And I'm wondering if we have timelines on that.
No, I can waive whatever it is. I'm not worried about that.
All right. Well, have we actually approved a 6/23 budget meeting, Mrs. Winters?
Bless you.
We have not.
Okay, so we're going to need to set that anyway. And I guess my question is, do we still want to do that given the discussion around legislative issues?
I think we need to, Mr. Marcus. We have to have that budget approved before. That's what the tricky thing is it's going blind, a little bit on faith, but we have to have that in place by statute prior to the beginning of the year.
Then why don't we do this? Unless there is a disagreement from any members of the board, why don't we agree on two date changes? One is to have a special meeting on 6/23 where we would meet in person. We'll limit the room to no more than 10 people. And at that time, we can deal with the budget and also deal with the superintendent's evaluation. Is there any disagreement on that?
No, I think that's an excellent idea.
That would be at the DO, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again, Mrs. Valenzuela?
I said that would be at the DO, the meeting.
At the district office, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Then without objection, we will set the budget, a special meeting for 6/23 at 6 p.m. To address budget and to address the superintendent's performance. We're talking about changing the July meeting to Tuesday, July 14th.
Yes.
Does anyone disagree with making that change?
No.
Now I want to know, Eric, would the July 14th be a Zoom?
Well,
we don't know.
I'm thinking that I don't see a reason why we can't follow the CDC and governor's guidelines as long as we can keep it to 10 or less in the room. Anyone else who needs to participate could participate by Zoom.
Okay, that's great.
Any disagreement on that? I'm not trying to put anybody into a difficult situation.
No, I'm fine with that. I'm going to have to go back to North Carolina, so I'll be in North Carolina on the 14th, but I could do the Zoom.
All right, good. Well, we'll find a way to make that work.
Okay.
All right, so we've set the meeting, and Mrs. Winters will take care of the postings. 6/23 budget and superintendent performance, 7/14 regular July meeting. And that moves us on to item 11.01. Any agenda items for our next board meeting? I think we're probably going to have a lot to talk about in terms of reopening of school. So that will probably take the bulk of our meeting. Is there any reason to meet earlier in a study session, Superintendent King, to discuss any issues related to reopening the school?
Well, one of the things we're going to be looking at that board meeting is actually for some decisions. It very well may be good if we have some extra time to go over in a little bit more detail what those plans are and to go over what the survey and the data results tells us, the direction of our community and how we can support that. So I think that maybe can be better.
Then why don't we post that as a 5:30 study session? You guys can define how you want to word that, so that we make sure that we cover those issues, and then a 6 o'clock start time.
Okay.
And I think if you can also provide any written materials, especially to Mrs. Rollins, who won't be there physically, we can make sure that she has that in advance and has the opportunity to posit any questions that she might have.
Absolutely.
Is that on the 14th regular meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Do we have any other items for discussion under 11.01? No. All right. Then that takes us to 12.01. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much for your participation, and I look forward to an in-person meeting coming up on the 23rd. Thank you.
You.
And I'm sorry I was late tuning in.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.